You feel like someone is watching you, don't you? I'm not talking about paranoia or conspiracy theories, but that persistent and unsettling feeling that your digital movements, your choices, your most intimate desires are being monitored, cataloged, analyzed by invisible forces that know you better than you know yourself. It's a feeling that grows with every notification that arrives precisely when you were thinking about something, with every ad that seems to read your mind, with every content suggestion that anticipates desires you didn't even know you had. This is not a dystopian fantasy of the future, it's the reality of the present. And according to Yuval Noah Harari, we are living through the greatest revolution in the history of human surveillance, a transformation so profound that it's redefining what it means to be a private person in a connected world. Imagine for a moment the life of an ordinary person just 50 years ago. Their thoughts were truly private. Their conversations took place in limited physical spaces. Their consumer preferences were known only by the local shopkeeper who kept notes in a dusty notebook. Privacy wasn't a right that needed defending, it was simply the natural condition of human existence. You could walk the streets of your town without leaving digital traces. You could have an intimate conversation without algorithms analyzing every word for behavioral patterns. You could change your mind about important matters without a permanent history of your contradictory positions being archived on distant servers. Now consider your own life at this very moment. You wake up and the first thing you do is check your smartphone, a device that knows exactly where you slept, how many hours you rested, how many times you moved during the night. Every app you open records not only what you do, but how you do it, how long you take to make decisions, which colors catch your attention, at what times of day you're more prone to make impulsive purchases. Your browser tracks every site visited, every word searched, every video watched to the end or abandoned halfway through. Your social networks analyze not just what you post, but also what you write, and then delete how long you spend looking at certain types of content, how often you check whether your own posts received likes or comments. This is the fundamental paradox of our time. We have never been so connected, and simultaneously, never has our intimacy been so surveilled. Harari argues that we are witnessing the rise of what he calls surveillance capitalism, an entirely new economic system where the most valuable product isn't physical goods or even services, but data about human behavior, your attention, your emotions, your fears, your aspirations have become the raw material of a $1 trillion industry that profits from the ability to predict and influence your next decisions. But the issue goes far beyond the commercial aspect. We are facing a transformation in the very nature of human autonomy. For millennia, humans fought against tyrants who try to control their bodies and actions. Now, for the first time in history, we face systems that aspire to control not only what we do, but how we think and feel. The algorithms that govern our digital platforms aren't content with selling products. They gradually shape our perception of reality, influence our political opinions, determine what information we access and what remains invisible to us. What's most disturbing is that this process happens so subtly that we rarely perceive its magnitude. When you see a perfectly targeted ad, you think it's a lucky coincidence. When your social media timeline reinforces your existing beliefs, you feel understood. When you receive accurate recommendations for movies, music, or products, you interpret it as a valuable service. We rarely stop to consider that each of these seemingly beneficial experiences is the result of a massive system of data collection and analysis that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, building a digital profile of you that may be more accurate than your own self-perception. Harari warns us that we are heading toward a future where the distinction between persuasion and manipulation will become completely irrelevant. When artificial intelligence systems can predict our behavior with 99% accuracy, when they know exactly which emotional triggers to use to make us take specific actions, at what point can we still speak of free will if an algorithm can determine with absolute certainty what kind of content will make you feel anxious, sad, euphoric, or motivated? And if that knowledge is used to systematically influence your emotional state and choices, will you still be truly free? Surveillance technology is no longer limited to our personal devices. Facial recognition cameras track our movements in public spaces. Smart sensors monitor our energy consumption patterns. Our cars record not just where we go, but how we drive, whether we obey speed limits, whether we make unscheduled stops. Even in our homes, virtual assistants are constantly listening for keywords, and studies have already shown that these devices occasionally capture and transmit conversations that should remain private. I need to pause for a moment to ask you directly, what aspect of this constant technological surveillance triggers the most discomfort or concern in you? Do you also lie awake at night thinking about how many different entities have access to the most intimate details of your digital life? I know we often keep these concerns to ourselves, perhaps for fear of seeming paranoid or technophobic in a world that celebrates every new innovation without question. But your concerns are valid and probably shared by more people than you realize. Share in the comments. My biggest fear about technological surveillance is your voice can help create a space where we can honestly discuss these collective fears instead of suppressing them. And perhaps by naming these fears together, we can begin to imagine ways to confront them. What makes this situation even more complex is that many of the benefits surveillance technology offers are genuinely valuable. Recommendation systems help us discover relevant content in an infinite ocean of information. Health apps can detect early signs of serious diseases. Smart navigation systems save us hours of traffic. Dating platforms connect compatible people who might never have found each other otherwise. The convenience, efficiency, and personalization we experience are direct results of the massive collection of data about our behavior. Harari suggests that we are facing one of the greatest ethical dilemmas in human history. How do we preserve our autonomy and privacy without giving up the unquestionable benefits of intelligent technology? How do we build systems that serve us without enslaving us? How do we maintain our individuality in a world where algorithms know us better than we know ourselves? The answer does not lie in a romantic return to a pre-digital past that in reality had its own problems of surveillance and social control. For centuries, small communities exercised intense forms of social surveillance, where every deviant behavior was noticed and punished by collective pressure. The difference is that this traditional human surveillance was limited in scale and scope. A gossiping neighbor might know some embarrassing details about your personal life, but didn't have access to a complete record of every decision you made over the past 10 years. The current challenge requires us to rethink fundamental concepts about ownership, privacy, and autonomy. If your personal data is valuable enough to sustain trillion-dollar companies, why don't you receive a direct share of that value? If algorithms use information about your behavior to influence your decisions, shouldn't you have the right to know exactly how that process works? If your attention and emotions have become economic resources, shouldn't we develop new legal frameworks to protect those resources like we protect other types of property? Some societies have already begun experimenting with different approaches. The European Union implemented the General Data Protection Regulation, which gives citizens significant control over how their personal data is collected and used. Some cities are experimenting with the concept of data dividends, where citizens receive financial compensation when their personal information generates economic value. Researchers are developing privacy by design technologies that allow intelligent systems to function without compromising sensitive personal data, but Harari goes beyond these technical and legal solutions, suggesting that we need a more fundamental transformation in how we think about technology and society. He argues that the real question is not how to limit surveillance, but how to ensure that the benefits of artificial intelligence and data analysis are distributed fairly and democratically, rather than concentrated in the hands of a few powerful corporations and governments. Imagine an alternate future where you have complete control over your personal data, where you can choose precisely what information to share and with whom, where you receive direct benefits when your data generates value. In this future, intelligent algorithms still exist to help you make better decisions and discover relevant opportunities, but they operate transparently with their decision-making mechanisms open for public audit. Recommendation systems still suggest personalized content, but you understand exactly why certain suggestions are made and can adjust the parameters according to your values and priorities. This future is not a utopian fantasy, but a real possibility that depends on the choices we make today. Every time we accept terms of service without reading them, every time we value convenience over privacy, every time we remain passive in the face of questionable data collection practices, we are voting in favor of a specific model of digital society, but we still have the power to choose a different path. The current generation has the historical responsibility to set precedents that will determine how humanity will relate to intelligent systems for decades to come. The decisions we make about privacy, autonomy, and the distribution of power in the digital world will affect not only our own quality of life, but also the opportunities and freedoms available to future generations. Harari reminds us that every great technological transformation in human history has created both opportunities and risks, Agriculture enabled complex civilizations, but also made new forms of social inequality possible. Industrialization drastically improved living standards, but also created environmental pollution and labor alienation. The digital age is following a similar pattern, offering extraordinary benefits along with unprecedented challenges. The crucial difference is that digital technologies operate on a scale and speed that do not allow for long periods of gradual adaptation. Changes happen in years, not centuries. The consequences of our choices manifest quickly and irreversibly. That is why we cannot afford to blindly experiment and fix problems decades later. We need proactive wisdom, careful reflection on the kind of future we want to build, and deliberate action to ensure that technology serves genuine human interests. The concept of technological surveillance we discussed today does not refer only to cameras and microphones, but to a completely new way of organizing society, where data replaces intuition, algorithms replace traditions, and predictability replaces spontaneity. This transformation can lead us to a more efficient, just, and prosperous society, or it can lead us to sophisticated forms of social control that would make ancient dictatorships seem primitive in comparison. The choice is still ours, but the window of opportunity to influence this trajectory is closing rapidly. Each passing day, surveillance systems become more sophisticated, more integrated into our daily lives, and more difficult to modify or replace. Each passing month, our dependence on these systems increases, making it more costly to question their fundamental premises or demand alternatives that better respect human dignity. That is why Harari insists that education and public debate on these issues are not intellectual luxuries, but urgent needs for the survival of democracy and individual autonomy. We need citizens who understand how the systems governing their lives work, who can make informed choices about the types of trade-offs they are willing to accept between convenience and privacy, between efficiency and personal control. Technological surveillance is watching you, that is true, but you are also watching back. You have the power to ask difficult questions, to demand transparency, to vote with your consumption choices, to support policies that protect your digital rights. You have the power to educate yourself on these issues, to educate others, to actively participate in shaping the digital future instead of passively accepting whatever future is imposed on you. If these reflections have touched something you've been feeling, but perhaps hadn't found the words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the big questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us on this ongoing journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. Technology is watching you, but you don't have to be a passive observer of your own life. You can be an active participant in defining how that observation happens, what it serves, and who benefits from it. The future of human privacy and autonomy is not set in stone, it is being written right now with every choice we make, individually and collectively. And perhaps this is the most important message of all. In a world of constant surveillance, the most radical and necessary act is to remain vigilant over our own ability to consciously choose the kind of society we want to live in.
This is something that I learned in like my first meditation course 24 years ago about engagement. It's very easy to engage the mind with certain types of content. It gave me this instruction, okay, just sit there with your eyes closed and focus all your attention on the breath coming in and out of your nostrils. Don't try to control the breath, don't do anything, just feel, is the breath coming in into the breath going out? Now, this was not particularly engaging. And then the algorithms in the mind, they immediately found these videos from my past, all these angry videos and all these lustful videos, which are very engaging, and like I lost complete touch with the reality of the present moment. It's very easy to engage the mind. It's very, very difficult to engage the mind with reality.
Imagine an AI that makes billions of dollars. The richest person in the US in a few years will not be Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or Mark Zuckerberg, it will be an AI. And this AI has the freedom of speech, which includes the right to donate money to politicians, maybe on condition that they further advance rights for AI. This is a completely realistic scenario. This is a question that we as a society need to decide, do we acknowledge AIs as persons with rights? There are people who are already convinced that AIs, because they have interaction with them, have consciousness, feelings. So maybe in a few years the world is divided between countries that recognize AIs as persons with rights and countries that don't.
AI should never pretend to be a human being. All this talk about freedom of speech is in many ways misleading because only humans have freedom of speech. But on platforms like X, like TikTok, like many others, the ones who actually control the platforms are AIs. I don't think that companies should censor what humans say on social media. Should be very careful about that. But so many people are saying so many things, and the ones who choose which posts to promote, who magnify the message, they are algorithms, not human beings. There should not be any protection of freedom of speech for the algorithms because the algorithms don't have freedom of speech.
So you're all for banning algorithms and bots?
No, not for banning them, but for regulating them. One key regulation is that an AI should never pretend to be a human being. If you're interacting with somebody online, you should be able to know if it's an AI or not. It's okay to interact with AIs, but on condition that it reveals it is an AI.